Okay, honors, we are now to Act 3, Scene 3. And as I mentioned in the last video, there is the knowledge that Romeo has gone to hide himself at Friar Lawrence's cell. Even the nurse of the Capulet household knew that. So we're going to pick up this scene in the friar's cell. And Romeo does not know that he has been banished yet. Now, I want you to know this for your quiz, but you guys got thrown off when I called it the yin yang speech because you thought that was a real speech. So don't be fooled this time. The yin yang speech was my terminology to help you understand the opposites. And likewise, Conley's terminology for this scene is it's a mirror scene. So a mirror reflects your image back. We just watched Act 3, Scene 2, and Act 3, Scene 3 is going to mirror that scene or reflect it back. How is it going to do that? With setting, character, actions and mannerisms, and mentality. How are the settings the same? Well, you're going to notice in this that in Act 3, Scene 2, Juliet was in her room, concealed, and Romeo is in Friar Lawrence's cell, another confined place. How are the characters? Well, if we're talking archetypes here, we have got the protagonists with their mentors. We know that Juliet looks to the nurse for advice, and we know that Romeo looks to the friar for advice. How are their actions alike? Well, they go through a series of emotions the same. Juliet is confused in the beginning. Then she is mad at the fact that Romeo killed Tybalt and all the oxymorons about him being fiend angelical. And then she is upset. We're going to watch Romeo go through the same series of whining and crying and being confused and being upset and being mad, just like Juliet. The mentality, how is the mentality of the characters the same? Well, they are both feeling sorry for themselves, that they can't have what they each other, but also can't have what they had wanted or desired. Almost to the point where you don't feel pity for them anymore, or maybe I just don't because I've read it so many times, but because they don't take any of their own actions or think it's any of their choices, and they just choose to sit and feel sorry for each other. So how does this all unfold? Well, Romeo opens it up when the friar had walked back into his cell, and he says, "Father, what the prince decreed. What did he say?" And he thinks it's automatic doom. Like, when am I going to be put to death? The friar says, "I bring tidings of the prince's doom." But he says that it's not such sour company. It's not so bad as you would think. And Romeo says, "What could be less than doomsday?" And the friar says, "He's issued you a gentler punishment. Not body's death, but body's banishment." Romeo answers back ungratefully, "Banishment? Be merciful, say death." And he instantaneously gets chastised from Friar Lawrence. He says, "Here in Verona, you're banished, but be patient. The world is broad and wide. It's okay." Romeo's like, "I cannot be patient. To be banished from Verona is to be banished from the world. Exile is death. So you're just cutting off your head with a golden axe. You're trying to make it seem better than putting me to death. But basically, by exiling me, you are." And Friar gets a little bit more direct with him. He says, "You are so unthankful. I cannot believe how you're acting. The law calls death for what you did, but the kind prince did not kill you. I cannot believe the way that you're acting." Romeo continues, though, like a child, getting angry. And watch what he's angry at. He says, "It's torture, not mercy. Everything, heaven, everything is here where Juliet lives." And he starts complaining. Dogs, cats, even little mice, everything can look at her, but Romeo cannot. And he starts yelling at the friar, basically saying that everything else gets to be here with Juliet. It's interesting that in the middle of this rant, though, he reminds us of the larger issue that Shakespeare's probably trying to send a theme about. And he gives a foreshadow. He says, "Have you no poison mixed up, no sharp ground knife so that he can immediately end his life?" And he looks at the friar and tells him, "Can you tell me, where in my body does my name lie so that he can carve it out of him?" Reminding us that this whole thing is started with some ridiculously feud, and he would rather just not be a Montague. The friar chastises him and says that it's not as bad as he seems, and he needs to pull it together. "Madmen have no ears. You're not listening to me." And Romeo says, "How can they have ears, basically, when wise men have no eyes? You're not seeing what I'm telling you." And really, Romeo is not seeing it himself. So the friar says, "Let me dispute thee of thee state. Let me try to calm you down and show you how you don't have to be like this." Romeo kind of gives a jab at the friar and says, "You cannot talk to me about love. You don't feel it. You don't know what it's to love. You're a friar." And they hear a knock at the door. At this point, you can see right by the stage directions, Romeo throws himself on the ground and starts crying. The friar is begging him to stand up because they don't know, it could be a prince's guard there and he's still in Verona. So he is begging Romeo to get up, hollering at the person at the door, as you can see, "Continue knock, continue knock." And he's yelling, "I'll be right there, I'll be right there. Who is it that knocks so hard? Who could it possibly be? I'll be right there. Romeo, please get up." And he won't. So the friar goes to the door and says, "Who is this?" And the nurse says, "Let me in. I come from Lady Juliet." And the friar lets her in. Now, the nurse immediately asks, "Where's my lady's lord? Where's Romeo?" And it's hilarious. One of the funniest lines in the play because it shows how childish, how girly Romeo's being. And the friar just points to the ground. There he is, crying like a little girl. I think it's hilarious. And the nurse comments, even showcasing more of the mirror scenes. "My mistress is even in the same case." She starts weeping and blubbering, weeping and blubbering. Then she stands up and then she falls down again. But I love the nurse's line too. She looks at Romeo and says, "Will you stand and be a man?" No, he can't. Conley's interjection. So he rises up his head a little bit and says, "You talk of Juliet. Does she hate me for what I've done?" Oh. And the nurse says, "No, she doesn't hate you. She calls forth for you, not understanding, and calls forth for Tybalt, and then falls down again." Friar Lawrence comes up with a monologue, not soliloquy. Why? Because other characters are there listening. And he tells Romeo what the master plan is. He first chastises him. "Go, friar. Your tears are womanish. Your acts are already done. Now pull it together and realize that you slayed Tybalt and Tybalt would have killed you. Your lady still loves you and lives. So here is our plan." And he tells Romeo that he is going to sojourn in Mantua. Okay, Mantua is the name of another town. Sojourn in Mantua. But before that, he's supposed to go to Juliet and see her decree. So run to her right now like the nurse wants you to. Then you're going to sojourn in Mantua, and when you're gone, we're going to find the time to go tell your marriage to all the people, reconcile your families, beg the prince to let you back because now he can see that both the families are joined. And we're going to welcome you back with 20,000 times more joy than you went forth in sadness. Now, where's Mantua? Let's take a look. So here's Verona and here's Mantua. Not that far apart for modern day. Back in the day, though, that clearly would have taken at least a half a day's ride on horseback. So Romeo's still not terribly keen on the idea, but it's a better plan than anybody else has. So the nurse tells him, you need to hurry up because here's the ring she gave me, and you better hurry up because it's growing very late. And Romeo says, oh, I'm revived by this plan, and he leaves to go see Juliet.